One thing I would never recommend is committing production passwords like API keys or connection string secrets directly into the source control. For local development, we can use mechanisms such as user secrets. For cloud deployments, Azure Key Vault is a strong option, ideally combined with a managed identity. Hey coders, what's up? Hope you are doing great. Thank you so much for amazing response for my previous video on .NET Full Stack Developer at EPAM. I came with another interesting video, this time on same .NET Full Stack Developer interview experience at MetLife. So MetLife is a largest global insurance provider company with over 100 million customers, over 40 countries. So this interview was done on 20th July 2026. There are completely 2 rounds in this interview process. This is technical round 1 and technical round 2 will be sharing in the next video. With 5+ years of experience, they are offering around 20+ LBA. Let's discuss the core concepts they have covered in this interview, like C#, LINQ, ASP, .NET Core, Entity Framework, SQL, and project level questions. I have also attached the Notion sheet with answers and the coding questions that they have asked in the comment section below. So do check out the link. I have also added the coding concepts and the important project level questions at the end of the video. So do watch the video till the end. Before getting started, do like, share, and subscribe to my channel. Let's go. So let's start with the C# fundamentals. Like they have completely deep dive into the semantic language rules and parameters behavior and type system constraints. Here they have quickly started with the abstract class versus interface. Like this is the most common question for experienced .NET full stack developer. In simple way, we can remember this. An abstract class is useful when we want to share common state or implementation between related classes, whereas an interface is mainly used to define a contract or capability. So try to prepare the follow-up questions on the same abstract class and interface. Like an interviewer can further ask, can a class inherit multiple abstract classes? No, but it can implement multiple interfaces. This type of questions can be expected from the interviewer as a follow-up. Next goes with the value type versus reference type. The important difference here is how the data is represented and copied. Value types directly contain their value, while interface types contain a reference to an object. Examples of value types are int, boolean, structure. Classes, arrays, and strings are reference types. So you can explain the difference clearly by showing some examples. So the actual memory behavior depends on context and implementation. Here you can see the examples of semantic parameters and typing. How we can see the behavior of reference out in parameters. Next comes with a constant read only. This is very common question as you have seen on the previous Virtusa interview as well. The easiest distinction is when the value is assigned. A const value has to be known at compile time and cannot change. For example, a mathematical constant can be a const, whereas employee ID assigned when the employee object is created could be read only. Next goes with init only and primary constructors. These are modern C# features. An init only property allows a property to be assigned during object initialization but prevents modifying it afterward. The interviewer moved into parameter passing and type safety. Here goes with the LINQ and collections. These are used to analyzing the query evaluation, performance trade-offs, and aggregation strategies. Enumerables versus IQueryable. This is very important question when working with the entity framework. Enumerable is generally used when we are working with the data already available in the memory. Coming to the IQueryable is useful when we are querying an external data source such as SQL Server, because the query expression can be translated by provider and executed at the database. You can also check the mental group by challenge here. where they also asked about find the highest paid employee per department using LINQ. So, for example, if I have 1 million employees in SQL Server, I don't want to bring all 1 million records into memory and then filter them using IEnumerable. I want to filter it. I want the filtering has to happen in the SQL Server itself. Next goes with select versus select many. Select transforms each item into another item. Select many is useful when each item itself contains a collection and I want to flatten those nested collections into one sequence. One to one element projections versus nested collection flattening. Where versus any. Where is used when I actually want the matching records. Any is generally used when I only want to know whether at least one matching records exists. Next goes with a two list, two array, two hash set. These are inbuilt collections where we can use all three materialize the query, but they create different collection types. Two list gives us the list, two array gives us the array, two hash set gives us the hash set, which is particularly useful when uniqueness and fast lookups are important. Check the query question that they have asked in this concept to identify the highest paid employee per department using LINQ. You can also refer to the optimized query. Here they have also discussed the concepts on .NET Core and Web API. Here they have started with a dependency injection, as it's a fundamental to understand the .NET Core. Instead of a class creating its dependency directly, we can provide those dependencies from outside. In this, we have multiple design patterns like singleton, scoped, and transition. So as a senior developer, we need to explain this concept with example. DB context is typically registered as scoped because we want a context associated with request rather than one global context shared across the application. Next question goes like, what happens when a HTTP request reaches .NET Core? Coming to the middleware versus filters, here comes the global HTTP pipeline execution versus target action level MVC filters. So we don't want any try-catch block duplicated across every controller. Instead, we can centralize exception handling using custom middleware or the newer IException handler approach. Coming to the request execution pipeline, an incoming HTTP request progresses sequentially through decoupled execution layers before returning a response. So how the HTTP request follows to the .NET Core. Starting with the client, a request first reaches the application through the web server. Thereafter, when it goes through the middleware pipeline, middleware can handle the authentication, authorization, and logging exceptions and handling exception handling and routing. Eventually, the request reaches the controller, which calls the service layer and eventually the database. Here performs the data persistence. Pipeline highlight, each step provides the middleware intercepts to guarantee security and strict input verification before execution. Coming to the JWT authentication flow, the client first authenticates, the server issues an access token containing the claims. The client sends the token with a subsequent API request. Thereafter, .NET Core can validate the token and extract the claims. Next, let's look at how we can interact with the database through Entity Framework Core. Here comes the most important concept, Entity Framework Core. Here we need to completely explain the architecture with a database visualizer and a relational schema relationship. They have quickly started with the DB context versus DB set. So DB context represents the session between our application and the database. It manages connections, change tracking, and database operations. Where comes to DB set, it represents a particular entity that we can query. For example, if I have an employee entity, I would have DB set employees inside a DB context. So next comes to eager and lazy loading. Eager loading means we explicitly load related data along with the main entity, typically using include. Lazy loading means the related data is loaded only when we access the navigation property. The important problem with lazy loading is it can unintentionally generate multiple database queries. Next comes with N+1 problem. It is a employee and a department. Imagine I retrieve 100 employees with one query. Then inside a loop, I access each employee's department. If a lazy loading is enabled, then I can result in one query for employee plus another query for each employee. That's the N+1 query problem. So we can avoid it by designing a query properly, for example with eager loading or projection. Here you can see the many to one relationship with the employee and department. Multiple employees can be related to one department. That's come with the many to one relationship. Next comes to tracking and as no tracking. By default, entity framework code tracks entities so that it can detect changes and persist them. But if I am only reading data and don't need to update those entities, tracking creates unnecessary overhead. That's where as no tracking can improve read-only query performance. Now let's move into SQL Server, which is another major area for a senior .NET developer. Here this slide covers the join indexing, clustered and non-clustered indexes, nested stored procedures, multiple result sets, and select versus stored procedures and execution plans. These are the major SQL concepts that we need to understand before attending to any kind of interview. Indexing for joins columns, like how we are using the indexes for joins. Why creating indexes on primary keys and foreign keys is mandatory for performance. So when two tables are joined using primary and foreign keys, so we should look at indexing both sides appropriately. Primary keys are most commonly indexed automatically depending on how the table was created. For foreign key column, we should evaluate whenever a non-clustered index is useful for actual workload. Next goes with the clustered and non-clustered indexes. The core difference is data storage layout and retrieval paths. A clustered index determines how the table's data is organized according to the clustered key. Think of a book. A clustered index is like the actual organization of pages. When a non-clustered index is like a index section telling you where to find a topic. The exact index page is a non-clustered index. Next comes with the stored procedures, calling another stored procedure. Yes, one stored procedure can execute another using execute option. Inner procedure can return a result set to the caller. Here comes the employee table with the employee ID, department with a department ID and a non-clustered index. Relational schema and indexing visual. Like indexing is indexing foreign key is vital to prevent full table scans during relational join and execution plans. You can check the complete flow on indexing for joins. Next comes to the project level questions and system design concepts. Like it's a critical interview topics evaluating the technical leadership, architecture and application design. So here we need to explain the project architecture clearly. Like I usually explain my project in 5 parts, like a business problem, architecture, technology stack, my responsibility and the technical challenges that I have faced while building this project. We can also view the modern application topology, like a client is React and the core API is .NET Core and the storage is SQL Server and deployment I have used the Azure as it is scalable cloud environment and services for hosting. And we need to explain the what are the major challenges that we have faced while building this project. And interviewer also asked in depth in what is my contribution in this project. This is where we need to clearly separate what the team have built and what I personally built. So better to not answer this generally. Use one real feature from your project and explain it in depth. Coming to the most challenging technical problems, we can explain like we had a performance issue and we have fixed it accordingly. And there was a challenge that I need to learn a new technology to build this project within 1 week. And what are the major challenges that we have faced at the low level or high level design, and application performance improvements and secrets in appsettings.json. One thing I would never recommend is committing production passwords like API keys or connection string secrets directly into the source control. For local development, we can use mechanisms such as user secrets. For cloud deployments, Azure Key Vault is a strong option, ideally combined with a managed identity. Here is the end of the video. Like technical round 1 was finished, and next round will be coding round with SQL concepts and LINQ queries. So that covers the major areas from the technical round 1. We went through the C# fundamentals, LINQ and .core principles, entity framework, and SQL servers, and finally project and few senior level questions. The important thing for 5+ years experience interview is not just knowing the definitions. You should be able to connect these concepts to real projects and explain the trade-offs behind your decisions. In part 2, we'll move into the coding and SQL round, including C# coding problems, LINQ queries, SQL queries, duplicates, and second highest salary and major salary problems and real world performance scenarios. Hope you guys like this video. See you in the next video. Bye.